Be humble or get humbled. A better human is never so arrogant as to think he or she has nothing left to learn.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back here at the Better Humanology Podcast, where we're trying to make you better each and every single week. My name is Jared Moon, and with me is, as always, Talon Schwan. What's up, Talon?
Hey, Jared.
How you doing this week, man?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic this week. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, mainly because we're doing the Better Humanology Podcast, in which we get to practice becoming better. All right, enough of the cheesy crap. Let's cut to what happened last week.
Uh-oh.
So we had a lot of challenges going on. If you don't listen to this podcast regularly, that's your first mistake. Go ahead and subscribe. And now you can get these, what we're about to go over every single week, and that is our challenges. And so last week we had Talon threw down a max wall sit.
Wall sit.
I threw down do 100 burpees for time. Just one time last week, do 100 burpees, get it done. And then I also, for the mental toughness challenge, challenged everyone to do again what we had already done, and that was tack a mile onto the end of your workouts.
Whew.
And that's where I want to start. Because from the social medias, I saw a lot less participation from people tagging me and stuff like that. And I fully understand, like, doing it once is like, man, that sucked. Doing it again is like, that's a different story. And so, to be honest, this past week, I didn't post anything on Instagram or Twitter or anything either. I wanted this to be fully, I didn't want that to be the reason I was doing it.
Okay.
And so I had to do it for myself because I talked about last week how hard those were for me mentally to like get out and just go do. And so I did them again this week, and it was better as hard things become. It was easier and not as challenging.
You knew what to expect this week.
Yeah, and that little pro tip I gave everyone on the having like Map My Run tell you every 0.1 mile to run faster. I was able to kill it on the miles this week. And so I just want to talk about that one. If you did it or didn't do it, I did get one email, someone telling me that they did it. So good on them for getting that done.
Most people were like how I was when you first said that. I was like, wait. Jared's gone crazy. He messed up something. Like, he's looking at the sheet from last week. He forgot something.
He just had a
Something's
seizure.
Wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was fun, and I'm glad I got it done, but we got bigger and better things to move on to this week. 100 burpees for time was killer. I always hate that workout and love it at the same time. It doesn't take a super long amount of time, but I got that done too. And also on social media, I saw a bunch of people do that one. So good on everyone for getting those 100 burpees in. And did you do your wall sit? You threw that?
I did. Yeah.
How'd you do, man?
Not as well as I used to do, like back in college days. But I thought I did well. I mean, I got to that point where it was like, okay, I've kind of forgot that I'm doing a wall sit, even though it was already past the threshold where I was meeting myself point. But I feel like that's kind of, I love to just daydream and get there anyway. So for me, that's where I would love to just bask no matter what. But I had a pretty good wall sit. I think it was like 10 or 11 minutes. It wasn't extremely long by any means, but
it's a long time. You could listen to a book and get some stuff done in that time period.
Yeah.
Small book, short
How
book.
about yours?
I was good, man. I threw it at the beginning of I did a warm up first, and then I threw it in at the front of a workout before a squat workout. So
Before a squat workout.
Yeah, I actually didn't time. I just did it till I didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And I mean, like, really didn't want to do it anymore. Not like, oh, this is getting a little uncomfortable. Yeah, I just, decided to completely exhaust the legs this past week. So
Did you come to any interesting conclusions during that wall sit?
I
Any
didn't.
new
Nope.
enlightenment theories? Nothing.
Nope. All I think about now when I'm pushing myself physically is, could you be pushing yourself harder?
Oh man.
And that's all I think about every. Really, I honestly think that I've hit this huge. It's not a plateau because I'm still like seeing results in all the places I want to see results. But I feel like I now could have a tendency to just go through the motions on some things, even if it's lifting something heavy. Like, oh yeah, you hit your, whatever 5 reps at 80%, good job, but still, it's like,
Yeah.
but could you have done more? And I'm starting to ask myself that question more often, and it's making my workouts a lot more challenging. And speaking of that, I want to give a Murph update because last week I talked about doing Murph, right? And I screwed up my rep count and ended up doing like the worst Murph time I'd ever done. I added 200 reps to the workout. Maybe. We don't officially know that. And then this past week, I set my fastest Murph time I've ever done. Set a PR this past week, so went from my worst Murph time ever to my fastest Murph time ever. I think it has a lot to do with adding these sprint miles to the end of my workouts.
Yeah.
And
2 weeks straight.
yeah, it's just, I think that obviously helped a lot.
So what's your fastest Murph time?
Man, I should have it memorized, right? But it's like 32 minutes something. 32 and some change.
Man, that's trucking it.
It's moving. But I did post it on Instagram, and I let everyone decide whether or not I was cheating because I had a fan blowing on me outside. So I'll let you decide. Was I cheating?
No, come on. A fan blowing on you? That's ridiculous. Does it say somewhere in the Murph rules you need to abide by the environmental standards of whatever environment that you're involved in currently?
I'm glad I keep you around sometimes because that. Yeah, I felt bad about it at first. I'm like, because I'm sitting there doing squats and I have a fan basically just blowing on my whole body the whole time. I'm like, this is kind of comfortable.
Yeah.
And I felt bad about it, so I had to call myself out on it. But Murph, one thing, I know some people are doing Murphs out there, and one thing I found is something that you can work on if you're trying to run a little bit faster is just your cycle speed. Like, so how many steps you're taking, say every 100 meters or whatever, you could count that out. But I'm going to keep it real simple and not get into anything technical like that, is just try to take shorter steps when you're running and do a 4-foot to mid-foot strike and take shorter steps. Because a lot of people, when they're like, I got to run faster, they start taking these huge steps, and that's just going to waste so much energy. So try moving your legs faster and taking shorter strides as opposed to taking longer strides and exhausting yourself, and see how that helps with just your run times in general. I think that would be try to give it maybe a tip. But something I want to do on Murph is, so every 10 Murphs I do something special. I do like strict Murph. I did double Murph. So what we have coming up is, I think I just finished like 27. So 30's coming up. And I want to put out some way for the listeners to vote what I do for 30. And I'll set up something formal in coming weeks, but I would like for other people to decide what I do for my 30th Murph. 30th Murph. I mean, maybe it's double Murph again to kind of compare
Triple
benchmarks.
Murph.
Maybe it's...
Is that even possible?
Maybe a 52, maybe I do that on number 50.
No.
Maybe. No.
Didn't you kind of get hurt on the double Murph?
I didn't get hurt. I just was worried about myself.
Yeah.
Like a coward.
We care about you. We don't want to put triple Murph up.
Well, what I'm thinking about doing is double weighted
you'll
Murph.
try it.
So instead of 20 pounds in the vest, do 40 pounds on the vest.
Okay.
Try that out. So I'll set something up. But it's enough Murph talk, man. So let's hop into the Better Human Bullets this week. You have a challenge for us?
So my challenge this week is a letter to your teenage self. There's no too short, no too long description for it. Really, you want to make it comprehensive. So you want to talk about some of the life lessons that you've learned over the years since you've grown past your teenage years. Some of the challenges that you faced, some of the bad decisions that you had, some of the things you could have strayed away from or ignored, and some of the things that you did well. Give yourself some props. I mean, make it comprehensive, and include all the knowledge that you wish you would have known as a teenager. It's really therapeutic in a lot of ways, and we've talked about a lot on the show how anytime you can improve your self-talk, that's probably a really good thing, because it's a really important part of becoming a better human. At the same time, for me, I talk about it all the time, being more aware of yourself, and how you see yourself, how you feel about yourself, how well you know yourself. It accomplishes all those things. And at the end, just kind of like with the challenge we had a couple weeks ago about your deepest, darkest secret, sometimes bad things can come up. Sometimes it can be, well, you should watch out for this and don't do this and don't do that. And you're really going down the wrong path if you do this. Then you want to make sure you go ahead and write those down, and then when you finish, burn it like last time. But at the same time, it can be real positive. I know I did this challenge a couple weeks ago in writing for one of my articles, and I really felt like it's something that can be really positive as well, something you can really benefit from, and then gain a lot of motivation for going further, and then looking back at your life and feeling good about what you've done so far. So it can go both ways, but try and knock that out this week.
All right, man, it sounds awesome. And I actually, while you were talking about it, I just wrote the letter to myself.
So that could be as short as you want, I guess. That's all the knowledge you need, huh?
It's 4 words, 2 sentences. Keep moving, try harder.
You're a cheater.
That's all I want myself to know. I would want it to be like kind of mysterious. No, okay,
You're cheating the process.
I'll go a little bit deeper, but I mean, what else do I need to know? Keep moving, try harder.
Dear you, I mean me, I mean you, I mean me.
Who? All right.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get into mine. Mine's pretty simple this week. Simple, not easy. Yeah, I'm, again, combining a fitness and mental toughness challenge. And some people have done this before. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. So there's a little song called Bring Sally Up. I think it's by the artist. Is it Moby? I believe it's Moby.
Come on, you know who Moby is.
No, it's been so long that I definitely know the song, but I've forgotten the artist. Yeah, it's Moby. So Bring Sally Up by Moby. We'll kind of break this one up. You can do it with air squats. You can do it with just a barbell. You can do it with 95 pounds. But my official recommendation, if you're feeling up to it and you're feeling strong, 135 pounds on the bar. And bring Sally up. So anytime he says up, you're in the up position. Anytime he says down, you're in the down position. And you can't come up from the down position unless he says up. And if you've never heard the song, it's just bring Sally up, bring Sally down.
Yeah, what does he mean by that? What is the song about? Do you know?
No, no one knows. It's
like, why are you bringing her up just to bring her down? It's like
you're asking too many questions about the. No, so it's really simple. So it's Simon Says with the song "Bring Sally Up," and it's squat. So if he says down, you're down until he basically relieves you and says up. Then you can come up. Okay. Sounds easy. With 135 pounds, it's a lot harder. And I would love to see any attempts on social media. So the only way you actually pass this challenge is if you do it all the way, full song. And if you can't do it, then you make the weight go down. And then if you can't do it with weight, then you do it with air squats. So you do it until you finish the song, however that is going to be. All right, and so that's the fitness challenge and mental toughness challenge. And then for the book recommendation, I'm going kind of a little off the wall this week. We have a mutual friend, D,
producer D.
Yeah, he's talking about this book the other day, and it's the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey.
All right.
And it sounds ridiculous, right? But I found that book very early on in, like the first month Emily and I got married. And long story short, Emily and I were in $100,000 worth of debt when we got married, between just like simple stuff. Like we weren't around like racking up credit cards. It was like,
yeah,
we had school loans, we had car loans, and we had a dog that almost died. So we had to take her to the vet and put that on a credit card. Like a Care Now credit card. That all equated to $100,000.
Wow.
And so it wasn't like a lot of stupid stuff that got us into that much debt, you know. And anyway, Dave Ramsey, love him or hate him, he has a really good method in the Total Money Makeover to pay off your debt. And Emily and I followed it. We were strict as all strict can be, super disciplined, which is hard to do. Discipline for yourself is one thing. Discipline as a unit, as a married couple, is another challenge in and of itself. And so we paid off our $100,000 worth of debt in 3 years. And that's not from like getting some like, you know, lump sum of money from somewhere, like luckily, or parents giving us money. That was on our, you know, me being an officer, and we just like squirreled away as much money as we possibly could when I was in the military. And so it completely changed our life. It being completely debt free now gives us a lot of freedom. So buying things for the garage gym is not as big of a deal, and doing different things because like right now our cars are paid for, and you know we don't do the debt thing anymore. So it just gives you a lot of financial freedom. And I think maybe that book, from a tactical level, has had one of the biggest impacts on my life without me really ever thinking about it. I was trying to think about that the other day. I was like, what's one of the most impactful books I could recommend on the podcast? And for some reason, I never really thought about that book. But man, it really changed the course of, right at the beginning of my marriage, it changed our course. So I recommend it, Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. You can definitely get the audiobook. If you want to do that, go to audibletrial.com/betterhuman and download that book. And if you do, let me know. I'd love to talk to anyone about that if they have a similar struggle or journey that they're going to go on. So after that, it's time for the show, man. It's time for us to get into some topics here. And so I wanted to kick the can right in your face here in the beginning with kind of traditional versus non-traditional education. You could call it unconventional education, and what you think is important. Because, I mean, there are really two routes that you can go today, and I think you could just follow the traditional path of high school, college, master's degree, doctor's degree, whatever, however far you want to take it, and then get a job accordingly. But that comes with a big price tag these days.
Massive, like you were just talking about.
Yeah, so like that comes with a big price tag, and I know doctors and dentists and stuff who like have been practicing for a long time and still haven't even come close to paying off what it took their education, to get their education in the first place. And then you could go the unconventional way. And I think that there's a lot of things here like psychologically involved, and that's part of the reason I want to bring it up is because there are a lot of pros and cons. But if you think about it, I think a lot of the reason people want to pursue higher education has to do with how they're perceived.
Oh, absolutely.
Has very little to do with what they think that they'll learn.
Yeah.
Has everything to do with I have a degree and it hangs on my wall.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with what did you learn. So just right off the bat, what are your initial thoughts on traditional versus non-traditional education?
Man, my initial thought is I think education has just become such a monster of its own that I really think people seek their education for prestige alone a lot of the time. It's like either that or it's like, this is what I'm expected to do, so I'm going to go do it. This is what society tells me if I want to be successful, I need to get this degree, to in turn get this job, to in turn feel successful. And I feel like you look at all the people who are having the most success, at least in our country, and that's not usually the case. It seems like people are finding more and more out-of-the-box ways to either get the information that they need to accomplish what they want to do to be successful, or to just maybe even still get the same accolades without going that traditional route.
Yeah, see, I really like. I'm on the not on the fence. I see the point in both. I think there's a lot of value in both. So let me give some examples. So now I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I run a business, and I know I have a lot of friends who do, and we're all in the fitness industry, and they all went and they all have degrees or whatever. They all did it in like kinesiology or sports or something right. Because they've always been into fitness. And I was the same way. I started in college as food nutrition science with a minor in kinesiology, and that's what I was going to do. And our main reason I switched was because I felt like I could learn more something else. Like there was a different degree that could challenge me more.
Mhm.
And so I switched to business and ended up getting a business degree, finishing with a business degree. And I will say the challenges, the stupid little challenges that a lot of my friends run into running their businesses, like not knowing how accounting works, or like some of the basics of how to run a business. I had all that stuff like nailed down from my degree. Like I was fine on, I guess, just how business works in general. And so I never like will shun my education,
Sure.
like
Okay.
it was not useful. But at the same time, moving forward today, because I commissioned as an Air Force officer in the state of Texas, you know this, through the Hazelwood Acts, I am 100% afforded free a master's degree. So I have just like on the other end of whenever I want to, I could get a free master's degree. And anyone listening to this be like, you have a free master's degree and you're not using it. It's like, in all honesty, it does not further my purpose right now.
Right.
I don't, the type of business I'm in now, you have to learn things in a month. You can't spend 3 years focusing on something to learn and then go apply it. Like things have to be learned and applied immediately if you want to succeed. And so I just don't have the time to go pursue some degree that is not dynamic. It's not going to work immediately. Right. And so I bring that up to kind of just bring the whole point of, I think, just dynamic versus static education in and of itself. Maybe the internet age versus our degree is going to be relevant soon. Do you like?
Oh man, that's taking it a whole nother direction.
Well, I said a lot of stuff there. So you take it any direction you want from what I said, and then maybe we can go to that.
Well, I just wanted to point out real quick that I feel like a lot of people put the traditional degree really on a pedestal. I think it's you see people coming to school. When I first got into my bachelor's degree, I was a philosophy major, and that's putting the degree on a pedestal. Like I had already known a lot of things about like ancient mythology, and Plato and Socrates and stuff. Like I was already interested in that stuff, so I already known like quite a bit about those things. So for me, like looking back, like everybody that I was, in that major with, people that were taking a lot of these other fluffy majors, were people that were just thinking, okay, I need a degree to get a degree so I can get out of here so I can make mom and dad happy, so I can probably end up being a manager of some, low merchandise store later on. And so for me, I have actually made a joke when I was in school back then that I felt like curriculum, I'm so glad that you had, a challenge in your business stuff to get really to get some good information for the things that helped you later on in life with entrepreneurship. But for me, I made the joke that I learned more walking from between class to class than I learned sitting in my classes, about just people and people watching and just paying attention to how people interact and, the world around you. Cause I felt like it was just so mindless sometimes. So that maybe it's just because I wasn't as interested as I should have been, or I didn't pick a major that'd be so challenging for me. But I feel like, to your point about in the future, how the internet's changed things. I think learning has become so much more dynamic now. I feel like before, when there wasn't the internet, people would go to school and they'd come home and they would just waste away. Basically, they would kind of forget some of the things they learned during the day, and they would, relax a little bit. They would have dinner with their family or whatever, and then they'd go to bed, and then they'd learn some more things that they'll probably forget the next day. Where nowadays, it's like we're nonstop, constantly learning. Even if a lot of it's trash, because most of the people probably on the internet are spending time. I made a joke before, watching cat videos or spending time on social media. But I mean, if you're somebody that's using the internet as a tool, then you're probably learning like 90% of the time that you're on it. You're probably learning something. At least if it's not useful, it's good to bring up a conversation to learn something more useful from the other person you're talking to. So for me, it gets real interesting because I feel like the things that you want to learn can be accomplished on the internet probably without even going to university or going to find like even online university education. I think if you probably search for enough thousands and thousands of medical videos on how to perform this one type of surgery, and you watch some explanations on it from a few surgeons, and you read some blog posts on like surgery, WMD.com or whatever it is, then you're probably going to be at least proficient enough to probably sit in the room. Probably a lot more than that tech is handing the tools over to the surgeon.
Right.
So for me, I think it gets, I don't know. Did you hear recently about, there's this teenager he's been arrested twice now for imposing to be like a doctor. Yeah. In various hospitals. He like went in, he read a bunch of medical like books that are like some of the cornerstone pieces of knowledge that you need, that they say to become a surgeon these days, and walked into hospital, got a job, and started working immediately because they were low staff. Did that for like several months, and then he was like 17 or something like that when they found out. He just looked.
Sounds like a lot like the movie Catch Me If You Can.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That's a good example. It sounds like, yeah, if you get your street smart, sometimes maybe you can fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Well, I will say, I think that if you want to do something like, so impersonating is one thing, but like, if you wanted to be a doctor, if you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you want to do something, you only have one option. And that is go get the degrees to be able to have those jobs.
Right. I'm not saying, you should become a doctor.
No.
I'm just saying, I feel like
but what you said is you'd be able to sit in the room and like be pretty intelligent about the subject. And I completely agree with that. I'm just saying, like, I think there are those jobs just come up because you brought them up, but there are some jobs out there that there's only one way to get those jobs, and that's through the traditional pipeline right now. That's neither here nor there. I think that if you want to get the traditional stuff, you go the traditional route. But bringing it back to, say, my world, strength and conditioning, is I don't think this is one industry I don't think that you need a ton of education to be good at it, but you don't need a lot of formal education. And I think that stops a lot of people up, is because I left the kinesiology like background in school because I thought it was a joke. Like I told you, I moved away from, I was passionate about fitness then, and I said, I don't want to do this because of the people I'm surrounded by. And maybe that was just my school, my situation, but all of those guys were just dicking around, not taking it seriously. They wanted to play racquetball during, their, allotted hours. Like they're just like, they all seem like slackers. And I was just like, this is not something I want to do. So from my experience, like, someone correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not saying it's a BS degree, but like, I don't think that you learned a ton. And I was in that education pipeline for a little bit. I don't think that you learned so much that it sets you apart as a coach or a programmer or anything like that.
Sure.
And then for a while, I was thinking about pursuing becoming a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and until I read their book, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So anything that I know now or what I do is all self-taught, and everything I've learned has come from coaches who didn't go the traditional route. Like Greg Glassman, the CEO and founder of CrossFit, or Louis Simmons, the founder of Westside Barbell. These guys, they develop their own stuff. They're not like sitting around, with the NSCA and trying to learn more about strength and conditioning. They're paving their own path. And so I think that's my ultimate point, just of education in general, is if you have the ability to burn your own path, whether that's in my world, strength and conditioning, whether that's anywhere that's it's not a doctor or lawyer, then I think that should be the way that you go, and not necessarily like this formal education.
Yeah. Well, I have kind of a disclaimer for me, because I feel like my vein kind of is similar to you, but there's one main hiccup, and it's to be a counselor, to be a life coach, or to be a therapist or psychologist for somebody, you have to have that title, right? So it's like all those people that were in your kinesiology degree system, they were all looking for that title so they could become whatever it is that they want to become afterwards.
It's a checkbox. Like,
right.
They're not expecting to learn much. They just want that. Like,
next to their name, right?
Yeah, that's all they.
Exactly. And I feel like, but that's something that you have to have really to be certified as a psychologist per se. You'll get just like that young teenager that got found out that he wasn't a doctor, I'd be the same way if I was like saying, okay, I'm going to prescribe you this medicine, and you're going to come in, we're going to do hypnosis, like that kind of stuff. Like I would be in trouble with the state, if I didn't.
Yeah,
have
that's what,
that
like there's some
requisite-
things that like by law you can't.
Right.
You have to have that formal education. I know when I one of the first classes I sat down in when I was food nutrition science was she introduced herself as all professors do, and she literally had like 16 letters next to her name.
Yeah.
And she actually said something along the lines is like, maybe you'll be lucky enough one day to have this many letters next to your name. And
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like,
That's an accomplishment.
yeah, like that's a PowerPoint slide, ma'am. Like that is not, like, show me what you know. Don't show me the letters next to your name.
Right. And
Maybe
she deserves that, ma'am, just because she's a woman, not because she's got all those letters next to her name.
everyone is sir, ma'am, right? I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. She's not anywhere better than any probably of her other professors that have maybe 2 letters next to their name.
But one thing I won't discount is the importance of education, because obviously I'm all about reading books and just staying up to date on things. And to be honest, over the last 2 years, I've probably spent enough money on online education for my business and for myself to support a cheaper master's degree. So I do think that pursuing education is very important. A big thing that I'll say is, having gone down this path for a long time of trying to educate myself through things online, is I do think that there's a certain point where you might disagree with me here, but there's a certain point where you can't Google your way to good information anymore. And what I mean by that is it's time for you to pay someone else who's already been there and done that. And that was a huge hurdle for me for a long time. I was like, no, I could just do hours of research and read this article and piece it all together. And then I bought like this, it was like a $2,000 online course that taught me about online business. And to be honest, that was one of the most impactful things I've done for my business. One of the best investments I made. And that was a huge amount of money to spend on an online course, especially when I was coming from this, like, well, this person doesn't have a traditional degree. That's kind of the stuff I was thinking, is like, what makes them, and the only thing that made them had the right to tell me is like they had a multi-million-dollar business,
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll listen to you. And so I'm just saying, I think I didn't want to spend money on that stuff for a long time, but I found the more money that I have spent on people who've been there, done that type stuff, I've just got it shortcuts your path if you just think about it. It's basically like having a mentor. If you find someone who's where you want to be and they're 10 years further along that path, and you can shortcut that by paying them some money, I recommend that you do it. As long as you trust that person, I recommend that you do it.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me, especially if you're trying to get to that next level when you're already on the path that you want to be on. But for me, a couple minutes ago, you brought up a really good, I don't think you said the word, but the concept was brought up, and that you said you were self-taught. And so to me, that means like kind of the old, argument about what's more important between education and experience. And so for me, it sounds like a lot of things can be overcome with experience. And so for me, kind of bringing it to my side of things a little bit, is just until very recently, I was in, a master's program to learn more about how to really make people be mindful and be more positive and more stress-free and everything with the counseling degree. And I really felt like a lot of things I was learning in those classes were getting maxed out. Like there were things that I felt like either they were common sense or things that I've been practicing for a very long time, either things that I learned from my time as as an officer in the military, where oftentimes you spend most of your time taking care of people and counseling people and trying to help people through issues and to be more productive and successful. And then in my time as a coach too, even just coaching sports, a lot of those things you feel like you learn already. And you don't have to be, I'm not someone that has to be told very much on how to listen to people. And so for me, it kind of, my experiences, I think were already at a higher level than a lot of the education I was getting towards in a master's degree. But it sounds like, to me, you said maybe you always need to pursue, it's important to pursue education. And I like your example that you used with that $2,000 course, because it sounds like it really helped you. But for me, I think I would tweak it a little bit and say, always pursue learning. Because I think, education, there is probably a plateau. Once you get that PhD, if that's, the level you need to be at, then you're probably going to be maxed out. But even after that happens, you don't want to stop learning. Or if you get a master's degree and that's all you need for your job, or you're in the military and you need that master's degree to make your next rank or whatever it is, you don't want to stop learning after that. You want to keep, pushing yourself and trying to just become more intelligent and more aware of the world around you at all times.
So I want to be clear about something.
Okay.
Because I think that you may have just hit on one thing that I fundamentally disagree with, but you never said it.
Okay.
So I want to clear it up real fast. Okay, the fact that you should have to experience everything to learn in life, is that something you agree with or disagree with?
No, that's not what I said at all. My point was that experience can sometimes replace knowledge, right? The education, like, I guess experience would be knowledge technically, but what I'm saying is like the education. So like the book knowledge,
the difference between doing and knowing.
In a sense, yeah. I mean, technically, like if you think about if you bring it back to that kind of medical analogy we were using earlier, like the brand new tech coming in, they're going to have a lot of book knowledge from all their training they just went through.
Well, let me make it very simple here. Here's a very easy example.
Okay.
Do you think that, like, say, let's bring it down to teenagers, or do you think that they should have to go through because teenage years are rough years for a lot of people, transitions, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's good for those people to experience those things, or do you think that they should avoid some hard times by listening to their parents?
Man, what a fantastic question. Everybody's different, so everything's relative is my first response to that.
Well, this is obviously going to be in a perfect world to where the information the parent gave is helpful. And
the kid's receptive to the information, the information the parent was saying. Yeah, see, that's what it comes down to. So, I feel like absolutely, you don't have to experience those things to learn that, basically to learn, from them. I think if you have a teacher that's willing to explain, all of the ins and outs and all, basically elaborate on what it was like and kind of let you feel like you were in that experience, give you the opportunity to ask questions, and then you're a receptive kid, which if you're listening to this show, then you definitely are. Yeah, then I feel like that's something you have to go through. I don't think it's every single situation people need to learn the hard way.
Okay, no, that's basically my that's the best way you could put it, is the hard way. It's because I disagree with that. So I know I've run into so many people who would rather learn the hard way,
right?
And I think that can be beneficial if you're unwilling to learn a lesson. If I'm just like, no, I got this, no, I got this, no, I got it, boom, it's like, oh, that was the hard way. But 10 times out of 10, if there was someone watching me and just straight up told me like, hey, dude, I've done that before, like, you're gonna totally F it up right there, I would just listen. Like 10 times out of 10, I would rather just bypass any hardship and listen to someone who has more experience. The hard part is finding that person who's been in whatever situation that you're in. I think that's the most complicated thing about it all.
Yeah, that's part of my challenge this week is you get to practice being that person, so that when you see people making the mistakes that you've been before, you can be that person for them.
I'm looking forward to doing your challenge now. Maybe I'll step it up. I'll go beyond my 4 words.
Yay!
But I did recommend a book, I think it was a few weeks ago, The Last Safe Investment. And this is really kind of my last point to this whole thing. Because, and part of the reason I wanted to talk about this tonight was just because I think that there has to be a line between, just this prestige mentality to I'm actually here to learn mentality. And I think the latter is what actually makes you a better human, not pursuing something that's just going to go on your wall. But The Last Safe Investment, that book talks about investing yourself, for the future. And I think that's huge. And I kind of brought up the point of like, don't be afraid to spend money on things online. I mean, make sure it's a trustworthy source or whatever. But, and I'm not even talking about traditional education. Like I'll give a very simple example that relates to my world. Westside Barbell. I'll go ahead and advertise one of their products. I think they have, it ranges between $3,000 and $1,000 to take different certifications he has. And
Oh, okay.
And one of them, I think his cheapest one, doesn't even really certify you. It's just kind of like a educational course. And if someone was asking me if they just want to get better at strength training in general, I would say go take that course. And they're like, are you kidding me? It's a couple $100. Be like, dude, like invest in yourself. That's important. Like you have to look at spending money on yourself as an investment. And like if someone wanted to learn more about, like I may have talked about this before, or maybe it's on different when I was interviewed on other podcasts, but when I went to the CrossFit Level 1 certification, I was absolutely like just super impressed with, and I mean, this was a number of years ago, but I had been to other certifications for just like basic personal trainer stuff. And I was just like blown away with what they taught, how deep the instruction was, and and maybe I just had a good group of people or good instructors, but I was super blown away, so much so that I recommend people, it's $1,000. I recommend people go do that if they just want to learn more about health and fitness. Like, go take a CrossFit level. Like, well, I don't want to be a CrossFit Level 1 coach. Like, are you a human being? Like, don't you want to know, like, how to move better and eat healthier? Like, go take that. I would really recommend, like, and I'm not affiliated with CrossFit in any way, shape, or form. But I think that stuff is super beneficial, and investing in yourself. Spending money on education can seem like a waste. Spending money on things that you want to learn can seem like a waste because you don't see the immediate ROI, and judging an ROI based off of, I learned this, how, what is the return actually going to be, is very challenging, but I think it's very, very worth it.
So speaking of investments, I think the best investment you can make in yourself is in your health. Not just your mental, but your physical health as well. That's something we've really focused on this show.
Agreed.
So for a little bit lighter topic, for this show, I want to talk about just this long-standing concept of using steam.
Sweeping the nation.
No, it's not sweeping the nation. It's been around for a long time. I mean, I got some history here we could talk about, but steam. So it's the simple concept, like if anybody's ever been to a steam room, or, if you're taking a really hot shower, you're probably seeing a little bit of steam. But what I really mean is more that kind of old school Roman bathhouse style where you're getting the full on steam room effect, where you're really immersed in steam. What do you think about that, Jared?
Well, I don't really. My only problem with steam rooms and saunas is you can't take your device in there and listen to an audiobook while you're.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, I'm just messing around. I think so. We
can't listen to a podcast while you're in the steam room.
We had an episode. I don't remember. People could scroll back if they wanted to. Is the garage gym episode where you kind of interviewed me because you were thinking about starting a garage gym. You interviewed me about garage gyms, and you're like, "Well, what do you miss?" Mm-hmm. And there are only two things that I missed about like a Globo gym, and one was racquetball courts because I was like huge into playing racquetball in high school and college. So anyway, the only other thing I missed was steam rooms, and yeah, man, I absolutely love steam room.
Well, tell us why.
I love steam rooms for their scientific benefits. No, no, really. I think I just like to sweat, to be hot. I mean, I like the cleansing effect, if you will. I'm not so much into the meditative side of maybe where that could go. And that's kind of where I'm at with almost anything I do. I didn't stick with the meditation habit because I might do it from time to time, but I just don't feel super stressed out or anything in my life right now. And I know there are other reasons you should meditate, but I'm just saying, there needs to be a really strong physiological reason for me to do something. And that's why I would like steam room, the physiological benefits, not because it gets me in some sort of any other reason. There's no other reason.
I think you have a real active brain just naturally anyway. So some of those things probably are a little, not necessarily harder to do or not as helpful for you, but sometimes maybe those things aren't as necessary because you're just so active all the time. But you're absolutely right. Steam has a lot of health benefits. I don't want to go down like a laundry list like I have been in the last couple episodes, but I mean, there are things as all the way from reducing stress to stimulating your immune system and just helping you be more healthy, helping your blood circulate better, helping you breathe, even though when you go in there sometimes, I know for me, when I go into a steam room and it's been a while, it's like, man, it's really hard to breathe in here. And I live in Texas, and it's it's pretty humid here already. So when you get in there, it's like you'd think I'd be a little more acclimated probably to um, that much humidity. But man, it's ridiculous. So I want to point out that I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is that this is not a concept that's new, like Pokemon Go we talked about a couple weeks ago, sweeping the nation. But it has something that's been kind of everlasting for thousands of years now. I mean, back all the way from like Greek times, it split off to the Romans and the Turkish, and you've probably heard of Turkish bathhouses. When I was living in England, they were still a big thing now, and they have been ever since like the 1850s. But it's interesting to me because they actually had a variation both in the Roman side and in the Turkish side of the steam room. I mean, it wasn't like you hear bathhouse and you think, oh well, they probably have a couple baths in there, right? People are in there like talking and chit chatting and talking politics or whatever, and they maybe clean themselves. But literally, both versions had 3 rooms, like a cold room, kind of like you were changing the warm room where most of the people were hanging out, talking, socializing. That's probably when you see any movies where like the Romans are sitting there discussing battle tactics and they're in a bath. They're probably in the warm room. And then they had the steam room version. That's just like our modern day steam room. It's actually usually built on top of a furnace. And those weren't usually meant for a lot of communication. I know Jared mentioned he doesn't really get into that kind of meditative thing so much when he uses the steam rooms. But for me, that's the reason I really want to bring it up on the show. Because even the Romans back then, hundreds of years ago, used it kind of more for that being mindful kind of concept. And so that's when I go to steam room, that's what I'm doing. I'm going at the gym. Luckily, I mean, I'm using my gym membership there, and I'm getting in probably after a workout. So there's a lot of things that can do after a workout and help, kind of. It can have some skin issues as well, but relieving tension and toxins and stuff. But for me, it's just going there and kind of getting like a decompression. Like I was so revved up, pushing my body. It's more like an opportunity for me to like rev down, like take that time to just like be in the present, maybe kind of look back on some of the things that I've done throughout the day or thoughts that I've had throughout the day and explore maybe them a little bit more. And then just kind of just be with me a little bit. And this probably kind of goes a little back to that me time stuff where I feel like you're using it for a positive benefit and not just wasting away sitting there. Probably I'm really glad you can't bring your phone into those things.
No, I was kidding. Totally.
But for me, it's got all those kind of benefits as well. I mean, I've heard it can help people with asthma, bronchitis, or like really, bad sinus problems and things like that. But for me, it's a time to just, because I don't know about you, but when I get into a steam room, it's like I try and find the one or I crank it up or I put the water on the thing or whatever it is. And until I can't see anybody really around me, like a couple of feet away, and it's so steamy in there. I don't know that anybody else is in there. And so I'm just really lost and focused on my breathing because it's probably difficult for me to breathe a little bit while I'm in there. So for me, it kind of helps me just get away from everything.
Yeah, man. So I work out in my garage. So everything you're saying to me right now is just like rubbing it in that I don't have all the luxuries of a Globo gym. But I wanted to kind of also talk about. We've mentioned some of this stuff before, and that is hyperthermic training or conditioning your body to these things. So there's actually, if anyone's listening to this and they're like, well, what is how could this help me, let's say, in a way that, the strength and conditioning world, or something I would care more about? I don't know how to phrase that, more like, how is this going to make me physiologically better, as I mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
And there are studies to back up everything I'm about to say. So improved cardiovascular mechanisms and lower heart rate, lower core body temperature during workload, higher sweat rate and sweat sensitivity as function increased on thermoregulatory control. Let me get to one of the interesting ones here because all that stuff just sounds like science babble. But a 30-minute sauna session 2 times a week for 3 weeks post-workout increased the time it took for study participants to run until exhaustion by 32% compared to the baseline.
Wow!
So you're able to run further, and it's actually using EPO. Not the illegal substance, but in your body to compensate for the corresponding rise in plasma volume. So like you can actually run further with only doing sauna sessions twice per week.
32% is a lot. That's a big increase.
And then there's a lot of stuff you could go on and read about protein degradation and heat shock proteins, but that stuff doesn't interest me as much as 30% more muscle regrowth than a control group during 7 days subsequent to a week of immobilization. So they are doing 30-minute intermittent hyperthermic treatments at 105 degrees just for a week, and they saw a 30% more muscle regrowth than the control group. So are you kidding me? Like, your muscles are going to get bigger. You're going to be able to run further. And last one, two 1-hour sauna sessions a day. This is the dry heat kind at 176 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 days, was shown to increase growth hormone by 16-fold on the 13th day. So just
wow,
this stuff is kind of crazy. And if a lot of the research that I'm talking about was pulled from Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she has her own podcast, but she's kind of the go-to girl if you do any research on hyperthermic training. If you just Google hyperthermic training, I guarantee the top 5 Google results are going to be either from her or someone who's interviewed her about that topic. No one knows this stuff just off the top of their head. It's all Dr. Rhonda Patrick. So giving her a shout out because she's really done the most research on it. And it's amazing stuff. I'm a big fan of hyperthermic training. I do it daily in the garage when it's super hot, man. So those would be my reasons for the steam and for getting into the heat. And I think I told you, so I don't go to steam rooms like ever, but just a few weeks ago, or maybe it's a month ago now, I was in New York visiting with the in-laws, and Emily went to the sauna. She went to go get a massage, and John, her dad, my father-in-law, was like,
shout out.
Hey, you know that you can use the facilities if she's doing that, like, at no charge. And I was like, what's up there? He's like, like a gym. I was like, who cares about the gym? And then he's like,
I'm a garage gym athlete.
He's like, there's a steam room and stuff. And I was like, I'm in. And so I went in there. It was like in the middle of the day on like a Wednesday. And I decided, I knew all this stuff about hyperthermic training, and I was like, I'm going to do a workout in the steam room. And so I did like just a bunch of sets of push-ups, and it's kind of gross because like trying to get it, those floors are kind of disgusting and stuff, but I did it anyway. A bunch of sets of push-ups and stuff, and I should probably throw in some disclaimer about heat being dangerous, but I think that everyone should know that stuff. And it was fun, man. I felt great. So I really love being in a steam room when I have the opportunity.
Yeah, you scare me because the steam room I usually go to, it's one of those you can't have clothes on or anything. So like it's tiered, so there's no like actual floor. There's like levels of floor. So if I was trying to do push-ups on that top or middle level, I'm probably like putting my hand down where somebody's ass has been and like junk. So for me, I probably wouldn't get there. But I actually have seen a couple people come in and start doing squats or things like that while I'm in the steam room.
See, I would never do it I was there by myself, and that's the only reason I did it. If anyone else was in that room, I'd be like, all right, I'm just going to sit next to you.
Yeah, if they were doing push-ups, they'd probably ruining my mojo.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to.
I'm in the zone.
I don't want to screw. That would be the main reason. I don't want to like screw with someone else. I know a lot of people go in there to relax or whatever, and I'm over there like.
So are you a steam room guy or are you a sauna guy? Because you did mention sauna.
I like to sweat, so I'm a steam room guy. But the only way to get those extreme temperatures, like in some of those studies I talked about, would be the dry sauna.
Right.
Because if you think about it, a wet sauna I think only gets up to like between 97 and 100 degrees maybe, but maybe even lower than that sometimes because of the wet heat. It's a lot harder for your body to handle. But yeah, those dry saunas can get up to 130, 140, 150, 160, and your body can handle that for shorter periods of time. So.
Right, and that's how I understood it. Was the sauna was more that dry effect, but for me, it comes down to that steam and just how it kind of pushes your body. I know there was a quote from like Hippocrates that I looked up, and it was like from way back, of course, where he says, "Give me the power to create a fever, and I shall cure any disease." Well, obviously, he wasn't correct there because I don't think a fever can cure any diseases. But what I found that fever does is that it's a natural thing that your body does. It's not necessarily something that always is incorporated with a sickness. That's your body trying to heal itself. It's your body's like way of being like, okay, now we're gonna respond to this sickness or whatever we have, and the fever is what helps build your immune system to start kicking in and working stronger. But for me, I have a couple other things that saunas did for me. I know these are things that I know you're Mr. Practical. You're all about how it's gonna help your health, but for me, I like to look at the social aspect a little bit as well. And so,
Social.
yeah, I know I talked about earlier, right, where it was an awareness thing. But when I was first introduced to steam rooms, this is early on in my military experience. It became a way for me to connect with some of my like higher level leadership, right? Because we go work out at the same time during the day. I was working as an exec, and it became something where I could really what?
All I just hope there's some Army guys and Marines listening to the things that you're saying right now.
No, seriously, it was a good way for kind of have like that real talk, right? Where you're away from everything else, and it's like, okay, you're in a state where you're already just in a relaxed environment, probably where you're able to level-headedly relate to somebody. Where you when
Was
you
this
usually
was
be able
this
to.
just be honest? Was this during the workday or after the workday?
Oh, come on now.
Which one was it? Which one was?
This is probably like one of those slow days. That's probably what it was. But for me, it kind of likens back, and honestly, I want to bring it back a little bit because for me, I thought it was a really big benefit in that way, because it likens back kind of to the Native American reason for having this steam room is that they call them sweat lodges, and they're just those things that are practiced now today, and they're important parts of different cultures. Because it's not only the idea of purifying your body of things, it's purifying your mind, and then kind of purifying your soul a little bit. I know they use them in, I don't want to get in religious context, but they use them in various ways to kind of reconcile with themselves, to kind of find like the guidance they need, the answers they need. And so that's not always an alone thing. They'll have the elders around sometimes, or sometimes some of the one specific person that's dedicated to being the person that kind of runs the sweat lodge. And for me, that I kind of liken that back to how my experience was at the beginning, because I never even been to a steam room. My boss comes in, he's like, "Hey, you want to come join us in the steam room?" Him and like his like 2 levels above him bosses are sitting in there. They usually go in there and talk about like strategic stuff. So I got to experience that as a really young lieutenant, lower level guy, and I felt like it was a big benefit. So that was how I jumped into the steam room thing, and then it progressed into a thing where I still use it for guidance instead of just talking to others. I'm talking more to myself.
So I would argue that the point that you are making about steam rooms with your senior leaders
Now I'm gonna have to like counter argument.
I'm just saying is a little bit more maybe doing things you're uncomfortable with, like playing golf or steam room, or because I mean, I don't know how many people. I've never heard of that. I've never heard like a social argument for steam rooms.
Well, it's in the research.
No, I'm sure that it is. I'm saying at the workplace. I mean, because the Air Force specifically, like you had a pretty like awesome setup there, right? Like
as an exec, I don't know, man. You don't know the hours I was working.
No, I've worked as an exec, so I know what that's like. I'm saying you're on a base to where you have a steam room. You're kind of in this community.
Sure.
That's very Air Force or socialist centric, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, it's like the Romans and the Turks. They had those bathhouses in every city and
I just feel like when you started to make that point, you said Mr. Practical. Either you were saying that you were getting away from the practicality, or you were trying to give that as an example of being practical. And
yes,
that was practical advice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll let it go as practical.
Interesting.
Well, think about it. The practical advice for the listener is to, when they are with their boss tomorrow, to go and try and get in the steam room with them.
Well, the thing that my point I'm making about it is, you probably made a good analogy, like playing golf or whatever it is that you don't see when you go in the steam room. It's probably not jam packed with like 20 other guys or gals or whoever you go in there with. So it ends up being a thing where you have an opportunity to connect. Where if your mentor, it doesn't have to be your boss, your mentor or your favorite parent or whatever, your best friend or your counselor, or maybe it is your boss, does one of those things, and sometimes that's something that you can jump in on them with, and you can probably gain the same experience. But for me, I think steam rooms have a special connection to kind of being real with each other and just kind of being in the moment, in the present, because you're all subject to the same environment. It's a different environment than you're used to. If you haven't been to a steam room, you need to get to one and try out what it's like, because it's not what just sitting around in a hot car, talking to your friend is like. It's a different kind of thing, and it pushes not only your body to be able to breathe correctly or clearly or whatever, or to be able to manage all the sweat dripping off of you, but just it pushes you psychologically being in that situation.
I mean, I think a hot car could push you pretty hard too.
Probably if you just leave it, for a long time, yeah, it can push you to death. We've heard some terrible stories about that. But my last thing I want to say, and this is kind of bringing it back to just how Talon sees the world often, is it releases endorphins in you, right? Which a lot of things do, working out, whatever, all kinds of things do. And so bottom line, even if you're not into the touchy-feely stuff like I'm talking about, or even if you don't care about all the stats that Jared's talking about, you go in there, you stay in there, 5, 10, 20 minutes if you're a boss, and you're probably going to hang out and you're going to feel better afterwards. Your body's going to feel better. You're probably going to think a little bit more clearly afterwards. And so for me, feeling good and feeling positive carries over into everything else you do in life. And it helps you become a better human in all those other areas. So for me, it's a benefit no matter how you look at it.
And if you're a garage gym athlete, go lock yourself in your car until you feel uncomfortable. Totally kidding. But seriously.
Yeah, just don't leave any pets or children in there.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, make sure you have your doctor and your lawyer and your nutritionist and all that present when you do that, and medical staff. I love how many disclaimers I could throw out there. And in all reality, I could go do that tomorrow.
Next week we're going to talk about disclaimers.
Yeah. All right. So that's it, man. I think that sums it up for this week. If you have enjoyed the podcast, head on over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review and a positive comment. I've seen them coming in lately, and I really appreciate that. And if you guys want to add some more, we would really love that. All right. Until next week.
Thanks.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.